Hello again, and welcome back to Scott's Big Mouth podcast. It's not Scott's Review Things, well, it is, but it isn't. But yeah, and that's about to go for another rebrand. So, anyway, over the last 18 months of the podcast, heavily involved with things like the CMS, Child Maintenance Service, Gingerbread, the charity for working single parents are supposed to look after the children that don't. You've got the family court, and basically what a complete and utter shower of shite they really are. My friend Zach here has set up a thing on Facebook called Equal Parenting UK, and we're going to discuss Zach's how do we put this politely, Zach? Comical
shower of yes.
Yeah, and how he's been let down, as have thousands upon thousands of people, and I'm going to say it again, largely male, by the family court system, the Child Maintenance Service, and Kafkas. So, Zach, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Living the dream, mate. You know me, living the dream. Another day,
almost another dollar.
Almost. Depends on who you're asking.
So explain to me what's going on, Zach. What's been going on in your life and what's brought you to me?
So, basically over the last sort of 5 years or so, I have been going through the fun system that is family court, Child Maintenance Service, and children's social care. Essentially, throughout that period of time, both my family, i.e. me, my partner, and my daughter, most importantly, have sort of been let down by what's the best way to put it? Multiple systemic flaws within the system. A system that considers itself to work on the best interest of the child, when actually it is they don't. And that they are more so in favour of, like you say, 99% of the time, the mother. So I suppose to start my story, essentially I started going through a very small sort of standard custody battle where I wanted to see my daughter more and my ex-partner wasn't allowing me. It was very on and off, very flippant. It was essentially whenever she wanted to. If it worked for her, and if it didn't work for her, then I didn't get to see my daughter. Obviously, we were told to try mediation, which is a load of rubbish. You essentially sit in separate rooms with one person who runs from one room to another, telling your message to them and vice versa. And yeah, obviously, we didn't get anywhere with that. So we moved on to family court. Essentially got every other weekend model of contact with my daughter, which is essentially about 14% of a child's time is every other weekend that they would usually see their father. Me thinking I had the best deal. Obviously, I went with it because it's a starting point and case closed. I think it's probably fair to say I've been in the unfortunate position of having to make 3 separate applications to the court, which just goes to show the obviously the failures there. Not that it's about that, but as a father and as the applicant, they've all been at my own cost. There's no support for the person making the application, whereas pretty much every time the mother will have legal aid because they will cry wolf around abuse, domestic violence, coercive and controlling behaviour, and so on. Second time round, we were in court due to my ex-partner having made contact with a friend of hers from about sort of 7 years ago, which to most people isn't an issue. However, this is abnormal because this particular person happened to be a convicted child sex offender. Convicted 3 times, went to prison for it. From what we understand, it was purely surrounding the making of and distributing of indecent images of children under the age of 13. One thing I will say, just for fairness here, not that you ever really should, but the making of images doesn't necessarily mean they've made the images themselves. It just purely means that they've had possession, I suppose, of them images. Still wrong, but just want to be clear, that it doesn't actually mean that he was taking these photos, but there we go. Got to the end of family court, got to a final hearing of 3 magistrates, was told that I should be lucky for the contacts that I have, because it's rare for a father to see his child as much as what I do, which is absolutely disgraceful. My ex-partner lied under oath about this relationship, saying it was only a one-off period of texting. It's never happened beforehand. It won't happen again. She sees the error of her ways and blah, blah, blah. I was then given what they call a section 9114 barring order, which means that I cannot or couldn't for a period of 1 year take my ex-partner to court for any reason, unless a judge signed off on the fact that it was serious enough for them to hear the case. Lo behold, I think it was quite literally 3 days after that barring, or sorry, 3 days after court, so 3 days into the barring order, they're in an intimate relationship. So my ex-partner, the mother of my child, is in a relationship with essentially a convicted paedophile.
Okay.
So was it really anything they could do? Couldn't go back to court. Went to social services, who did some, what's the best word to, investigations. Bearing in mind the seriousness of this, you'd think that to a degree you'd want them to take a bit of time to come back to you, because you'd want them to investigate, right? I made this call to them or referral to them when I found out at about 3:30 in the afternoon. By 9:15 the next morning, so not even 24 hours, they'd completed all their checks and there were no issues. Nothing to be reported. And so be it. Essentially, I've got to wait.
So they're saying they had a full investigation
in the space of less than 18 hours. Well, not even 24 hours. If it was 24 hours, it'd have been 4 o'clock the next day, but it wasn't. It was 9 o'clock the next morning, Scott. Okay. So, yeah, absolutely ridiculous. But there we go. Nothing I can do. There's a barring order. I can't go to court because they'll say to social services, "Is this the case?" And so services will say,
"Why did the judge issue a barring order?"
So
you couldn't take her back to court.
So I didn't know at the time. I assumed it was because they thought I was basically making it up based off what social services had said, and to protect my daughter from another sort of court application and set of proceedings. They were hoping that a year's time would be enough to almost settle everything down. So apparently you could put a time scale on a child's welfare, which means that once they've done something, they can't do anything for a year. I get the point. I get the point of a barring order. It makes sense. But in this case, it didn't make sense. It makes sense if you've got a father who, sorry, Scott, it makes sense if you've got a father who is every month taking the mother to court for contact when he's never seen his daughter in 6-7 years. That makes sense. But in this case, where there were genuine and legitimate evidenced safeguarding concerns, that shouldn't even have been in their mind. It's fair to say I was completely unrepresented throughout this entire process and then done everything myself, whereas her solicitor, she was represented by a solicitor and a barrister, all through legal aid, who was essentially able to rip me a new one, really, and there was nothing I could do about it.
The thing with the barring order is, and I agree, actually, I completely agree. I understand why it's there, but when the court's already failed, by the looks of it, multiple times, so you're not going back for the fun of this, because obviously every time you go back to court, it costs you money. Now, I think the last time I went to court, it was 250 quid.
It's just gone up by about 4% as well. So
yeah, so you're not there for the fun of it. Right? So the fact that they put a barring order in, and yet they haven't actually fulfilled any part of what they're supposed to be doing is insane to me.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think when you say, or when you ask sort of like why they done it, after this, I got a bit of legal advice to my own cost. And they said that sounds like a really unusual thing to happen for essentially what is a first time application. Because obviously
Yep.
it's the second set of procedures, the first one was purely for contact. So for what was a first sort of real set of proceedings, I suppose, it was quite unusual. So it was recommended that I'd done a freedom of information request to Portsmouth City Council for essentially all the records that MASH, or the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, who are an
Yep.
absolute joke,
Yep.
have on me. I'd done that freedom of information request. I shit you not, Scott, I had about 712 pages of paper rock through my front door one day. Was going through it and found an internal note which was accidentally submitted onto their system, where a social worker has turned around and said, and I remember the quote word for word, it stuck with me, and I tell you what, it's harrowing. It's, these concerns appear to be in line with what are malicious and persistent communications from father to mother in order to undermine her parenting ability. Now, bear in mind, this person is somebody that's got in a relationship with a convicted child sex offender, somebody who served about 27 months in prison, someone who's on the sex offenders register for life, which, from what I'm aware and from previous research, not everyone goes on the register for life. 29 months is quite a substantial sentence. The next court hearing will go into sort of what he was convicted of, which obviously I appreciate I have to be semi-careful with what I say. However, he was also given what is called a SHPO, so a sexual harm prevention order. Now, these are things which aren't, as I'm told, given out lightly. So what that really means is things for me and you and the normal person which are completely legal. For example, playing Call of Duty, being in the lobby on a headset, and a child comes on and you talking to them. That's completely legal for me and you. It's completely legal for me and you to have a phone with internal storage and a camera. For him, all of those things are illegal. So it means that his offences were so severe that they've put something in place to make him more arrestable in the future should something come up. Sexual harm prevention orders are given to 5% of convicted child sex offenders.
So it's quite low.
Yeah, and low for a reason.
It shows you the serious nature of what this guy has done.
Basically, yeah. So we went to court the next time when I had a phone call from social services, completely out of the blue, and they're like, "Is that Mr. Holloway?" I'm like, "Yeah, speaking." There's like, "Hi, it's again, I won't name names. It's blah 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 from Portsmouth City Council Children's Social Care Department." And I was like, "Hi, how can you help?" And they're like, "We've got something to tell you about your daughter." There was me thinking something really bad's happened. Someone didn't have my number, or something at school's happened, and so on. So naturally, breaking it a little bit inside, and the phone call was, "We've had contact from your ex-partner, so your daughter's mother, and they've come to us for advice on how to safely integrate sex offender into my daughter's life." So back off to court we go. What I've done at this point
I wouldn't think there's any way that you can safely insert that person into your daughter's life. I mean, how does that work?
I mean, it doesn't, and this is the thing. This bit here. So the previous court hearing, she lied. I couldn't prove it. You know, it happened. The next set of proceedings are by far the most. It's shocking, and I almost have nightmares from it on a regular basis. The information that I've heard, the things I've seen, what I've been put through, would be enough to give the devil himself nightmares. Do you know what I mean? And I had so this phone call was this. So I had my daughter, had her through my contact period at the time. So I enacted my parental responsibility and removed my daughter from her mother's care. Immediately filed an emergency application to the court at my own cost, even though I had legitimate safeguarding concerns. But there we go. And so we go. About 4 or 5 days later, we had an emergency court hearing. I wouldn't really say 5 days is an emergency. However, granted, Saturday, Sunday. So by the Tuesday, we had an emergency court hearing. So
Okay.
in hindsight, probably, fairly quick. So I was told that I needed to give my daughter back to her mum, while social services and CAFCAS do their relevant checks. So they ordered a Section 7 assessment.
Section
where
7, yeah.
It's a deep dive intrusion into your lives, essentially. They've done all these checks. They found out this relationship was happening, that they'd been together for about a year, even though she had denied this in court. They submitted that assessment to the court. Went back to court for the next hearing, which was about 12 weeks later, and were told that CAFCAS needs to do a report. So CAFCAS have done a report. The first thing the CAFCAS woman said to me was, social services have already done an assessment, so whatever I write here is basically pointless.
May I suggest, no matter if they hadn't done an assessment, the CAFCAS report would be pointless anyway.
Yeah, exactly that. Now, to be fair, as much as CAFCAS are a shower of poo, this woman was actually okay. However, my concern is they visited mother 3 times in person. I had a 15-minute phone call.
I was going to say, I'm guessing, because any instance or people that come to me about CAFCAS, and I've had my own dealings with, and people that don't know, the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support
Service. That's the one.
A service that systematically fails on every level, CAFCAS.
Every level. So many flaws, so many... a complete disregard for family, really.
Their local head office is a 3-minute walk from my home, and it takes all my well-being and mental strength not to go around and brick their fucking windows. I'm sure I know I wasn't going to swear, but
I agree. And you have to remember, for people that are watching this, they may not have been through this process and may not know the ins and outs. And I appreciate that I am essentially a sofa lawyer at this point, but 9 times out of 10, well, no, probably like 11 times out of 10, whatever CAFCAS write in their report, the courts will take for gospel, and that will be the thing. That's what they enact. So at the end of this assessment, or this letter, which was 3 pages long, so not really that long, essentially wrote at the bottom, essentially wrote at the bottom that by introducing this gentleman to my daughter's life will only benefit the mother, it will never benefit the child. So that report was done. I think it was 4 months later we went back to court, and social services had done another assessment, or what they call essentially an addendum report to the initial Section 7 assessment. And this report had said all the guy's convictions. So it was, I apologize, it was 4 convictions, not 3. It was 3 convictions of making of indecent images and 1 conviction of distributing. Now, I took a Mackenzie friend with me at the next court hearing, purely for the reason was, not that I needed it, but this Mackenzie friend was a family friend. Now, this person is, so I can't name them and they had to be completely anonymous, is a serving police officer. However, this person serves in Hampshire's Child Protection Division. So he was able to give me all the little bits and nuggets of information that I needed to essentially, not this about that, win my case. So what she told me was, they don't go, so you assume that if they got 1,000 images, you'd have 1,000 convictions. Essentially, each conviction of the making of indecent images is how many devices they found. So they found 3 devices, so you'd assume laptop, tablet, phone, or 3 phones, or 3 laptops with these images on. And then the distribution, they can only ever give one conviction for a distribution. So, so I asked to see the police report on his arrest and his, I suppose, his risk assessment, because he's obviously deemed to be a high risk to children, obviously.
Yeah.
Social services said no, because it might not be something that I want to see. And I was like, but I sort of do want to see it. Reason being is, as much as it disgusts me, there is social services trying, her solicitor was trying to argue that it might not have been children of my daughter's age that he was into, or it might not have been girls, or it might not have been their age. And my argument is, if he's got a conviction for looking at photos of 4-year-old boys, it's going to be the exact same torso look of a picture of a 7-year-old girl, which is what my daughter is. A bit different if he's saying that all of his photos were of 15-year-old boys' private parts. My daughter's a 7-year-old girl. There might not be as much of a risk in that, is what they're arguing, basically. So I eventually
they're arguing semantics at the end of the day. The guy's on a register for a reason.
Exactly that. And I've seen this report, and I knew from the length of him being on the register and from the prison sentence that he got, that and the fact he's got this sexual harm prevention order, so the additional thing, it had to have been pretty fucking serious.
Yeah.
So we got the report through. 18,000 images, including videos of children aged newborn to 16. 18,000 images of children. And
so what did Kafka say? They've done their investigation on this thing. What did they say about this?
That the contact, if it was going to happen, would not be in my daughter's best interests and would only be in the best interest of the mother. Which, you're telling me, right? And so they basically did nothing, because the judge swatted their report away like it was nothing. And based on that Kafka's report, the courts ordered social services to do an addendum report. That addendum report came back about a week later, and it was filed a day late because the social worker didn't realise what the date was. Imagine if I'd done that.
Yeah.
Imagine if I'd filed a report a day late, especially when we're talking something so serious as this.
Well, anyway, it'd be thrown out because you haven't hit what you haven't hit your target. So you've gone.
But for them, it's okay. Exactly. But for them, it's okay. My ex-partner in the second set of proceedings filed an assessment a week late, and I was like, "Where's the financial penalty, or where's the incentive to not do that?" Oh yeah, but this is literally what magistrate told me. But family court isn't like criminal court. There isn't really a process to it. And you're telling me these are things that magistrates, so someone who's got no legal training, are telling me.
I was going to get, because I have made I said to you, I've made some notes, and one of my notes is family court, actual judge, or greengrocers. Because that's what they are. They're greengrocers generally in the magistrates' courts, and in the family court. Generally, you're set in front of lay people, so people that have got no particular knowledge of the law. They're governed by the law, the legal advisor in the court at the time. So you've got these people that could be either me or you judging on other people's lives. How can that
judge, jury, and executioner, right?
Correct.
Another random fact I came across: 9 in 10 magistrates in family court are female.
I sat.
And you'll see the bias here. You'll see. I've got many stats, Scott, which will go through as part of my equal parenting campaign. That will, you think will rock people to the core, and they do. But go on.
I sat the first time I went to court, physically in court. The green growth magistrates come out and I'm sure it was four women, and I just sat there and thought,
I've lost.
well, I've lost. And then the second time was because I took my ex-wife back for an enforcement order because there were 10. I had joint custody of my son. I had 60-40 in her favour. I went for that because she's his mum. I thought that was the right thing to do. There was 10 breaches in a year, so I took her back for an enforcement order, which happened via Zoom during COVID. I had evidence. I had evidence on my phone of emotional parental alienation, which I presented to the court. They ignored it, and I sat there, and there was 4 greengrocers again, and 3 of them were women, and I just thought I've lost, and I lost.
Some of the things some of the stats I've got regarding that sort of thing of the resident parent and so on are mental. But yeah, I mean, in this next court hearing, part of their assessment said, so we went to court 5 times throughout this set of proceedings. Their next assessment turned around and said that my ex-partner had been groomed by this guy into thinking that he was safe, because she told Kafkas that she doesn't think he's a threat to children.
Come on.
He says he didn't do it, so he must have not done it, and he said sorry, so everything should be forgotten. So
I would suggest
services.
I would suggest
that's how it works. That's exactly how it works.
18,000 instances tell you he did do it.
Yeah, because something that this family friend, this Mackenzie friend, said to me was, when they convict people for these things, they look at it on an almost common sense basis. In the point where, say, for example, I was to send you a file with 1,000 images on, and one of them happened to be pornographic, and they can see what you've done. They can see how long your finger's been on that keypad for that amount of time, how quickly if they see you went, oh, bloody hell, and deleted it, chances are they're not even going to come knocking your door.
Yeah.
So they take a common sense approach to it, which again is, in my view, right in that sort of instance, but wrong. Yeah. If you've been caught, you've been caught, right? So they said that she had been groomed by him, that she did not understand the risk that he posed to children, despite him having 4 convictions and this other protection order. That she had lied numerous times to professionals about the relationship. These are all their words. And they also stated in their report that they would like her to undergo essentially counselling, training, courses on how to understand risk, to basically know what a paedophile is, and to better understand relationships in the future. If this was an accidental thing, for example, she'd been married to him for 10 years and then it came out, and she wanted to not believe it because of that reason, I could semi-understand that being their thought process. But she knowingly entered into this relationship, knowing of his convictions. So this was about a week before Christmas. I think it was the 23rd. So I was in court for this. Corrected, sorry, it was the 18th. I think. Anyway, about that week. And about a week before Christmas. The judge turned around and went, okay, fine, let's do this work. Let's, despite all this the evidence that she clearly hates doing this, there's something wrong up there. Let's keep it as it is. My daughter can stay with her mother, and we'll carry on with the abnormal 50-50 agreement that we had. So, shockingly, over Christmas, they broke up, didn't they, Scott? And in less than 3 months, because their timescale was 7 weeks of work to be able to determine whether she is understanding the information that's going in. So the court hearing, bear in mind, was a couple weeks over Christmas. The court hearing was about 9 to 10 weeks after that hearing. So bearing in mind that they're no longer together, social services completely reversed their stance, declaring that they had no longer said that she had been groomed, that she posed no risk to the child. And the judge told me, well, the gone. So what do you want to do about it? Also worth noting, in this 9 to 10 week period, she's in another relationship with somebody who she's also introduced into our child. Now, this guy, to be fair, he has custody of his own child. So he can't be a wrong one, but still, within 9 to 10 weeks, well, I say that, this is what I'm arguing, but within 9 to 10 weeks, she's left that relationship, introduced my daughter to another gentleman, and they're playing happy families, and they didn't see an issue with that. My issue was, how quick do we have to move before we deem that a relationship's unsuitable? I'm not saying that he can't be introduced to my daughter, but doing sleepovers within sort of 3 or 4 weeks isn't right. And I was told by the judge, it's not my right to tell my ex-partner what she can do with her boyfriends. To which point I stood up in court, I'm going to swear, because my word for word judge was, with all due respect, Your Honour, what a fucking joke. Of course it's my issue when it affects my daughter. The court usher steps in the room because he's heard me swear. I get threatened to be removed by security unless I calm down. So obviously, I had to sit there through gritted teeth. I got told to stop flailing my arms about like an idiot. This isn't helping my daughter. When in hindsight, the reason why I've gone to court is to help my daughter. It was such a rapid change in judgment without any real significant changes that just shows a complete lack of accountability and a complete disregard for the safety and well-being of my child.
Especially when your ex-partner's, and as you said, this new fellow, I'm assuming she's still with him in your days.
She is, yeah. It's about 4 months now, but they're living happy families. So.
Yeah, largely irrelevant. The fact that she's been shown before to have not the best judgment, shall we say, at a base level.
Any level.
Or any level. The fact, it just baffles me. It just baffles me that the courts can just. And the other thing I would say about that is, let's role reverse this and do what you've just said. And the whole thing is you introducing a lady that's got, you're done.
Convictions. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I would lose all my parental responsibility. I would lose all access to my child. And some of the stats like I'll go through just go to show why that would never happen. Like why it would never happen the way around it is. And I remember us having a social service. So my daughter was on a child in need plan. So they hadn't even upgraded it to the child protection. She was still in a child need plan. We actually had a meeting that was booked in to review this plan the day after court. I got told the minute we walked out the courtroom that the meeting's not needed because they're going to end all their involvement. And shockingly, less than 45 minutes later, I had the decline for the meeting invite in my calendar. I had a letter from social services saying we're ending all involvement. There will be no ongoing support. And then about a week later, I got a letter through the post asking for my feedback on their service. And to which point I used it as toilet paper. But
going back to cost as well, Zach, because you said that she got legal aid.
Yeah.
Whereas you've obviously learned to represent yourself. I can comment on that actually because I had a barrister. I had a barrister for 2 of my court hearings for my son, and I know how much that costs. Because I
was quoted for half a day about £1,500 plus VAT.
Yeah, so for a full day, mine was £1,500 plus VAT. So for the 2 days, cost me £3,000. And if you think she's got a solicitor in there and a barrister as well, on a taxpayer's money.
When she's the one in the wrong.
When she's the one in the wrong, I find it absolutely incredible. Also, we haven't covered, I don't know if you're going to get to this, the Citizens Advice Bureau. because the citizens,
they're good for probably like advice on debt, and that's about it. But yeah.
Well, I would never go to them about anything about the CMS.
Because they are basically paid for by the
They are funded, or there is not actually funded by the CMS, but there is payments that go from the CMS to the Citizen Advice Bureau
I'm pretty
that
sure
say,
then if you were to do any sort of freedom of information request, they remove anything to the CMS or absolutely refuse to comment on it, because that's why
so
they got their money, right?
what they would say, they are not allowed to give advice to a member of the public that would make the CMS look bad.
Bring it into disrepute.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a joke. We will come on to the CMS because it's
Good.
one of the most important things.
Good.
Just very quickly wrap up the court thing, I suppose. So, was asked what I was looking for, to which my argument was resident parent, full custody, my ex-partner to have supervised contact until social services are fully in agreement with the courts that she can understand risk, that she's no longer been groomed. And I got told that was unreasonable, because my daughter loves her mum. And I was like, if only I could tell my 7-year-old daughter what her mum's been up to, she probably wouldn't. But there we go. So what I got out of it was, and I got bullied into, I got given 3 options by the judge. I got told, 4 options. I got told I can just give up because I'm probably not going to win anyway. The worst, not to that effect, but
well, thanks.
Literally that. Yeah. I got told that I could take it to a final hearing where I've got basically no chance of winning. I got told that they can pencil in a review hearing for 3 months' time to see if my position has changed, or I could just accept a 50-50 shared care arrangement. So, given the 3 options were the other 3 options were I weren't going to win, I took my 50-50 shared care. Now, I took the piss of it a little bit, let's say. So there's a thing in family law that you'll get told even by solicitors that a non-resident parent can't be 2 separate households.
Okay.
Which is an absolute lie, because my court order says, because I asked for it to be in there and the judge agreed, said that there is no resident parent. It says quite literally word for word, when obviously child's name, when the child is with father, she lives with her father. When the child is with mother, she lives with her mother. There is a complete 50-50 split on contact. So it's 1 week on, 1 week off to make it 7 nights for the child maintenance service benefit. And basically she got told to lump it and leave it. And there's also another barring order in place for the next 4 years. Until she's 11. She's 7.
Wow. Okay.
It's about 3.5, but it's until her 11th birthday, basically. So
you've got 50-50 care.
I do, yeah, somehow.
It's I mean, I know fathers that will snap your hands off, and I'm sure there'll be some comments around the fact that you've got 50-50 care, and maybe, and this isn't me, but maybe you're gonna, within the system we work within, you're a very lucky man.
Which is why my fight for change is so important.
Yeah.
Because as I was told by 3 magistrates, that it's abnormal. Well, it shouldn't be. Yeah. It should be the complete normal. It shouldn't even have to be a thought process. And
did you know that you probably researched some of this, so this one's off on the top of my head. I've done a lot of stuff around this over the years, but getting a bit older now, I tend to forget a bit more.
No comment.
We are one of the most advanced countries on earth for most things, but we are one of the most backwards and draconian countries on earth when it comes to the distribution of time between separated parents.
Well, like I say, I mean, the current norm is, and the default of the courts is to offer the non-resident parent, which most of the time is the father, contact every other weekend, which is 14% of the child's time.
Yep.
How is that right? And I was going to do it later on, but let's do some stats and figures. Why not?
Yeah, go for it.
So, 93% of sole residence awards are made to mothers.
Yep.
Fathers comprise of approximately 97% of non-resident parents.
Yep.
40% of mothers have admitted to obstructing contact between child and their fathers. That's openly admitted. So you've probably got, let's be honest, 60% that just don't admit it. What percentage of resident parents that default on contact orders do you reckon face any legal consequence?
It's probably 0.
It's close. It's 0.8%. 0.8% of people that break court orders face any consequence.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing, because what they actually do is they reward criminality. The CMS reward criminality, because if you, it just blows my mind. In any other part of society, you break the law, there's a consequence. Unless you're a resident parent, 93%, being the mum normally, they then restrict the dad, as was my case. I took her back. I lost everything, so they're rewarding criminals.
100%. And I think there's another sort of stat somewhere that says, I haven't written this one down, it's off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's something along the lines of 20% of court orders fail within the first 6 months.
Because the parent that has got the order that they don't want makes it impossible for that order to work.
And also, there's this thing that they use in my Mackenzie friend mentioned. It's called disguised compliance, right? And what that basically means is my ex-partner could turn around to me and go, I know you were going to have contact this weekend, but Joe Bloggs is ill. Oh, yeah. Okay, fine. Should we do it next weekend? Yeah, okay. Oh, I totally forgot, but Joe Bloggs has got a school trip that weekend. And it's disguised compliance. It's breaking the law. But, because ultimately, if your child's sick, they still got to come and see you, right? You've still got to deal with it. And, well, again, this is a child maintenance argument, but which we can go on to. But the government's target for family court to be start to finish is 26 weeks.
Yeah.
As of 2023, end of 2023, the average was 146. 3 years, basically. 146 weeks. And that's, you've got to remember, fathers being in limbo of when they're going to see their kids again.
Contact centre, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Once every week, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. And yeah, but like you say, the child maintenance service rewards it, which is my next argument. I mean, in my previous sort of custody arrangement, so I had my daughter for 1 week. It was a 2-week sort of rolling arrangement. So week 1 was Friday till Monday. Week 2 was basically leave it a week. No, start again. Week 1, was Wednesday to Friday. And then I wouldn't see my daughter again for a week, and I'd have Friday to Monday. So if you look at a 14-day rolling period, that's 7 days in every 14. That to me is 50-50.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take genius to put 14 in a calculator divided by 2 and get 7, right? But the child maintenance service make their orders based on nights.
They do.
So obviously, Scott, me and you know each other outside of this little thing here, and there's the chap on our little Monday night group who mentions that he does everything for his kids Monday to Friday while his ex works. He doesn't have them overnight, but who pays full child maintenance? He does. And I was paying, bear in mind I had 50-50 contact, £297 a month. I was basically paying for my ex-partner to look after my daughter. And I remember my ex-partner telling me, because I recorded all my calls with her, I remember my ex-partner telling me that, word for word, the child maintenance isn't for daughter. It's what you owe me for the upkeep of our child and for whatever I need. Well, no, it's called child maintenance, not ex-partner maintenance. And they need it, like I've watched your thing with about Gavin Briggs.
Gavin,
Disgraceful.
yeah.
Absolutely disgraceful. For those of you that don't know, it's definitely worth watching that video. But it just goes to show how they fabricate figures. They don't know where those figures have come from. I did a freedom of information request on them as well, and had about 3,000 pages rock up through my door. And you know what? Can't be asked to read it because I'll just get lost.
And half of it will be redacted.
It is. Yeah.
I've got them. I requested mine, and
I did it mostly a pain in the ass, but
yeah, I've done that. The child maintenance service completely of all of these organisations that we've spoken about here, CAFCAS, useless. The family court, an absolute disgrace. The CMS one really boiled me because what they're doing is they are actively
persecuting fathers.
Persecuting, but what they are driving, and I don't say this lightly, but it's provable. They are driving people to suicide.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Right. I've thought of it a few times.
So I've been there, and at the moment, my son's just turned 18. I haven't seen him for 4.5 years because my scumbag ex-wife. Go watch my video on Parental Alienation. That'll explain where I'm at. And so I pay £350 a month for. It's for my son. I don't begrudge the money. Do I begrudge the money? Yeah, I do actually. I'm going to be honest, I do now.
To a degree.
I do now.
Yeah,
I do now.
And it's money that you could keep, and if you actually had contact with your child, like you were meant to, pour into them, right? And that's the thing. Like my ex-partner, when she was getting £300 a month, they were having 3-4 takeaways a week. My ex-partner was always in nice new clothes, but my daughter wasn't. I'm like, I know exactly where that money is going, but how can you prove it? And you know, they need to have a fairer, more transparent calculation system that sort of maybe calculates actual time spent with the child rather than overnight stays. It's almost like the child maintenance service should be done in vouchers. So if you get £300, £100 for this, point
about nights is something that it's boiled me for a long time because you're absolutely right. Why does a sleeping arrangement equate to more money? It has nothing to do with money.
Let's be honest, you don't feed your child when they're sleeping, right?
Exactly. So I completely agree. The problem we have with the CMS is it's so intrinsically linked to the government and the Department of Work and
government
Pensions.
department, exactly that.
And the other problem, and it's something we haven't discussed yet, which is Gingerbread, the charity for single parents that is actively gives advice on its website to the single parent, the resident parent, 93% being the mum, on tactics they can use to get more money out of the non-resident parent. And all the time that is deemed fair game, and whenever the other problem you've got with the CMS is, and again, I've said this time and time again, that the scandal of the child maintenance service dwarfs the post office scandal fucking massively. If it ever breaks, which it won't ever do, I don't think, because the mainstream media refuse to talk about it. But if it does, it'll bring it down.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I mean, when I had 50/50 court order, what I do now, I went to child maintenance service. It was like, here's my court order. Can you close down our case now? And this is what someone told me. But we also need to look at who is the main carer. And I was like, right, well, what does that mean? Well, if she's ill, who takes her to the doctors? Well, whoever's care she falls ill in. Who takes her to the dentist? Well, it's whoever's she's with when her dentist appointment is. Who does her food shopping? Well, whoever she lives with. Like, why is parenting responsibility, why is it such a financial strain? Why does it have to be that way? And I had fictitious arrears put on my account.
No.
Never believe it, right? I know. It just popped up one day. I got a letter. Here's your deduction of earnings order. And I was like, what's that about? I do direct pay. And my deduction of earnings order went from being, because obviously I've changed jobs, I've got a pay increase. So guess what? Because I earn more, it means I have to pay more. Because, you know, when you earn more, it means your child costs more money. My child maintenance went from £237 a month to 641. So
Okay, what job do you get, Governor?
I am the president of the United States. But so I looked on the portal, which is obviously accessible 24/7. And they always encourage you to go into the portal because if you ring them, don't bother going to work that day.
I'm just going to simulate going on that portal for you. Okay.
Go on. You've got it. I would simulate being on hold, but you know I've got other things to do this week, so I won't. And yeah, so my ex-partner had told them that my salary, which I'm not precious, about 35 grand a year, my salary was 74. And had been for about a year. Well, actually, it was half of that and had been for about a week. So guess what arrears went on my account? About 60 grand.
But they work off of, but they should be working on last year's P60, which they don't.
They
don't because they'll just pick a fucking figure of anything that's currently.
Do you know what I think they do?
I also know there's another because David Gates. If you watch this, I will get to you. I promise. Because there's a guy called David Gates who his story is fucking phenomenal. And I'm going to get to him because I'm going to get to it. But when it was the CSA, back in whenever that was, he knows of stories. He was told of stories of people that worked at the CSA, whatever you want to call it now, that would have inter-office competitions to find out who could get the biggest arrears that week. So that's the caliber of scumbag.
That's the measure of the man, right?
I mean, come on. So they're picking, and going back to Gavin Briggs, £36,000 or whatever they. I think it was the figure that they landed on his account before he decided that he.
That was it.
That was it, and then
the day after,
the day after, that suddenly disappeared from his account.
And do you know what? I honestly think, and this is very out there, and I have to be careful because this could be a libel case or whatever you call it, but defamation of character, libel is the other one. Are they trying to make the family court system easier by removing fathers? Probably. And it's disgraceful. I mean, it just highlights the consequences that are devastating and rip families apart of such a flawed system.
And it's all about money.
Of course it is. It's always about money. Like, you know, does it really cost £250 to file a bit of paper when you've got to write it yourself?
Yeah.
So like you're spending 3 hours of someone in the court's time to write your bit of paper. You've got to fill it out yourself. You email it across to them. Within 10 minutes, you'll get a phone call. Where's our money, Mr. Holloway? And it's like, well, I'm about to pay you if you give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, like for someone to pick up the phone and go, well, thanks, but we've sent that to the judge now. What, and that costs 250 quid. Why does that need to go up with inflation at 3%?
How
Inflation's not
about
even
you send me?
3%.
How about you send me the link? I'll send it myself. I can save myself 250 quid because it's
Yeah,
button pushing.
can't do that though.
That's what it is.
Can't do that though.
Can't be
Can't do
difficult.
that. Not allowed to do that. So yeah, there's dramatic reform needed. Hence why I have set up Equal Parenting UK. So
Okay. So tell me about
the
Equal Parenting UK.
so the aim of Equal Parenting UK is obviously mainly aimed at fathers getting the justice they need in terms of seeing their children. Now, obviously, I have to say this, and it is true. There are some bloody mental fathers out there that are probably doing the same to mothers. However, it's all about the bias within the system, and
Before you go any
essentially,
further, just before you go any further, I think this is really important for some balance here. Child maintenance service, not just letting down non-resident parents and fathers. The child maintenance service lets down everybody that is
of
involved
course,
within
yeah,
that service.
100%,
It is an
definitely,
absolute joke.
yeah,
Mothers, I know of mothers. I've had mothers contact me as well. Wanda, my lovely wife, criminally let down by the child maintenance service. So although this is two fathers and 97% of fathers that are involved in this shit, there are cases of women that are
100%,
absolutely
yeah,
abused by this fucking system as well.
1,000,000%. And the campaign is a movement dedicated to reforming the family court system, the child maintenance service, the child protection service, if social services, what we're going to call them, and we are advocating for reform and accountability that puts children first. So there are many stories, and I will read out a few
Mm.
very briefly, of families, mainly the children, that have been let down by the court system. So, most recent one, Sarah Sharif. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is on the back end, I suppose. Sarah was a 10-year-old little girl, lived in Woking. She was murdered in August 2023. Her father and stepmother basically killed her. A prolonged period of abuse. She suffered extensive injuries. I listened to the sentencing because I wanted to know what happened, because it's important that people know these things. And the father and the stepmom would burn her feet, the soles of her feet, with an iron, so that when she had to walk, it was painful. They put her head in a carrier bag, had a little hole in the bag, so that she could hardly breathe, and so that she would be malnourished and things like that. When a teacher spotted a bruise on her temple, I think it was on her head, all of a sudden she started wearing, obviously they're religious, you have to bear with me, whatever it's called, clothing to hide it. When a female teacher, which is in their law, who is also Muslim, asked her to remove it, next thing you know, she's being homeschooled. And Surrey Children's Services had previously been warned about her abuse
Yeah,
many and many a times, and they did nothing. And it was
yeah.
actually her mother who was going for custody of her, because she was trying to say these things were happening, and the courts weren't listening. They were saying, but he's the resident parent. It would be, it would be difficult to remove her, and it would negatively affect the child. I'm sorry, but murder's pretty fucking negative.
So yeah, it sounds to me like she's been fairly negatively fucking affected
Harmed
anyway,
anyway,
to be
right?
fair.
Exactly that. Next one, Alfie Still, 9-year-old boy from Worcestershire. I don't know if you've heard of this
Hmm.
one.
No, I haven't heard this one.
No. So he, again, was murdered, 2021, 9 years old. He endured prolonged abuse at the hand of his mother and her partner, who happened to be a convicted sex offender. He was beaten with belts, shoes. He was forced to have cold water baths. After these baths, he was being made to stand outside in cold temperatures. On the day of his death, he was found with 50 injuries across his body. 9 years old. How's the body even big enough to sustain 50 injuries?
Wow.
The social services and the police were contacted 60 times about the abuse that little boy was receiving, and they did nothing. I think it was about 6 months before his death. A neighbour rung the police and said someone is doing something bad to their kid in the bath, and they were drowning him in the bath, and no one came out.
I think what shocks me more than anything about a lot of these cases that hit the news, and obviously Wanda's a preschool teacher, so
My partner is, yeah.
so she hears about safeguarding stuff, and the amount of times that these things are presented to social services and all of the other sort of so-called people that are there to help, and they miss them. Now, when you're missing stuff of this importance in children, there should be heads rolling for this, and very rarely do you hear any accountability from anybody.
Leader of this council was sacked for this reason, yeah. And the problem with that is Portsmouth City Council, well, any council, social services, their managers investigate themselves. So if you make a complaint, the manager who you're complaining about will investigate themselves. How is that fair? How is that unbiased? I mean, there was a case, next one, where that thing exactly happened. There was a subsequent review that essentially concluded this little boy that the safeguarding was inadequate and that professional interventions that were failed should have protected him. He's called Finley Bowden. He's a 10-month-old baby. And he died on Christmas Day in 2020, 39 days after being returned to the care of his parents. His grandparents were trying to get custody of Finley, citing drug use and domestic violence within the home. The court ordered a return from care to the parents over a 8-week transition period, which is shorter than the 4 months that were recommended by social workers. It was shorter because of COVID. That was your excuse. But anyway, he's a 10-month-old baby, so probably no bigger than 71 bruises, 57 fractures, 130 separate injuries led to his death. I've got a list here, I shit you not, of about 13 or 14 other cases. I won't go into them all, but obviously, you've got Victoria Climby, you've got Baby P, Arthur Hughes, Star Hobson, which is quite a well-known one, Keegan Downer, Kyril Matthews, Daniel Pelker, Lauren Wade, Elsie, Shannon and Liam Sweeney. All of these children were failed by social services and the family court system. And I've been contacted as part of my campaign by many, many people who say there is a bias. I have mums telling me that there's a bias against men. And it has to change.
The trouble is, Zach, people can deny it, but it's so in your face. It's so obvious that there's a bias. And what frustrates me, what it really does frustrate me, is we're supposed to live in a country now where equal rights are the norm across working and every other form of whatever you want in the country. An equal right of man and woman is the norm, except when you've got children.
Say again?
Except when you've got children.
Then, you are irrelevant, especially if you're a man.
I'm just a pay packet, mate. I'm a pay packet.
Me and you both. Snap. So my campaign is in the early days, but we've made some massive leaps. So I do have a meeting with my local MP tomorrow.
Who's that?
Amanda Martin.
Okay.
Labour. apparently I have to say that. I have to say she's Labour. I don't know why, because
Well, it's
they're great.
factually true.
At that meeting will also be a member of the select committee for children and families, which is pretty good. So we're going to discuss openly, obviously, the needs for reform within the family court system, the child maintenance service, children's social care, and I am fearful to a degree that I know exactly what I'm going to hear within 15 minutes of the meeting, and they are going to blame 14 years of Tory failure, right?
That long?
Yeah, maybe not. But
Tory systemic Tory failure. Previous governments. Blah, 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 blah.
But my argument is not to change what's happened in the past. It's to prevent people like me, like you, around the country that are failed by, and mostly the children. But I don't know if you follow Equal Parenting UK on Facebook, but it quite literally is Equal Parenting UK on Facebook. And there was a quote that I posted yesterday from somebody. She is a campaigner whose ex-husband murdered her 2 children whilst on a supervised care. So he was in a contact centre and he murdered his 2 children. She tried to get this removed, and the quote of the day from social services were, the courts ignored the risk to my children because he hadn't yet harmed them.
Okay.
So basically, to put it in my case, and this is a bit TMI, but it needs to be said, social services weren't going to do anything unless an adult raped my daughter. And even then, would they have done anything? Look at all these cases where fathers and mothers have tried. Would they have done anything? Probably not. Too often, people, parents, fathers, most of the time, are forced to hand over their children to parents who are not suitable to be parents. And every person, I'm firm with that, every person who goes through the family court system is a victim of a broken system.
Yep, I agree. There's not a word, and I've myself many times a victim of a system that is completely unfit for purpose. It's go back to the CMS. You're on about self accountability. Did you know also with the CMS that if there's a complaint about them, like Gavin Briggs, they investigate themselves as well. So it's self-investigation. How do you investigate yourself?
Well, you can. It's easy. You just find that you've done nothing wrong.
Well, that would
why would you knowingly put yourself out of a job by admitting that you got it wrong?
It's crazy to me. Amanda Martin, I don't know anything about Amanda Martin.
So she used to be a teacher.
Politics and always the shit out of me these days because they're all corrupt.
Yeah.
But so she used to be a teacher. Do you? I'm going to ask a question. Do you? Have you got a time scale for the meeting? You got how long it's going to be?
No, they're not giving me a time scale. It's at 3:30 in the afternoon, so they've got no rush because I must be the last one, so I'll be sitting there for hours.
I'm going to ask, and I mean it nicely. Okay, so it might not come out nicely, but it's meant with genuine intention. Do you think you're wasting your time going to talk to this woman?
Yes, I do. The case I just mentioned a moment ago with the quote of the courts ignored the risk to my children and harm them yet. Following that, this was in 2020. Apparently, there was a review by the Ministry of Justice into the family court system.
Right.
And apparently, changes were made.
Yeah, probably for the fucking worse.
Yeah, changes were made. But the problem is children's safety doesn't come before contact in the system, where it must come before contact. Just because, so in my case, just because when me and my ex-partner broke up, my daughter went to go and live with her mother, it
Yep.
doesn't mean that that should be the normal forever.
No.
Especially when they're being put in a position that is risky by
The
someone who
trouble
doesn't
is,
understand risk.
yeah, you're absolutely right. The trouble is, there's no flexibility. So
Yeah.
and let's be honest, people's lives change.
Hmm.
So now might not be tomorrow, might not be next week, might not be the following month, and so on and so on. So there has to be some facility within that if something changes, it must be made easier to approach and say, "Hey, this was working. Now this has happened."
Yeah, things change. Things
Yeah.
change. And, you know,
By the way, that cost you
we,
250 quid.
plus that.
Plus that.
Yeah. So, and this is what annoys me, because all you've got to do is things can change and things need to change. Was it the other day that Parliament voted on a new law that was then given royal assent about steelworks in a day? In a
Yeah.
day, they debated, voted on, and passed an emergency law about steel. But when it comes to safeguarding children, it takes years. Why?
But then they'll pass laws in days to the CMS that makes it easier for them to go straight to your bank account and take the money. Against, the CMS. She told them I hadn't paid a penny. When my bank statements told them that I had,
But they didn't read them.
they didn't read it. So they tried to put me on a deductions of earnings order of £600 a month, and it took me 2 months. 2 months, various emails to Penny Mordaunt at the time, who was actually quite helpful.
Yeah, she's good MP to be fair.
But yeah, just an absolute share of shit on one person say so, and that's
Well, that's the
where we're at.
thing.
And
That's the
you're on about
thing.
equal.
Like,
You're on about equal parenting, and I think you've got it right, actually, because you're not saying you are saying that fathers are being dismissed, but what you're not also saying, you're not saying is this isn't a one-way street for males. There just needs to be fairness for both.
correct.
I'm probably going to get this
Oh,
fucking
absolutely.
both sexes, but there are fucking 400 of them. I don't really know. But yeah,
Two
for
now,
both.
according to the courts of
I,
justice.
I did see that. Uh, for mum and dad, that's probably wrong as well. We're getting myself in all sorts of trouble now. Yeah, for mum and dad, or mum and dad and dad, or whatever denomination and sort of there is there should be equal rights for both people. And you're going back to what you said earlier about everything's done by the child benefit. So I'm assuming your ex claims child benefit,
Yeah.
so she has control of everything because of that child benefit.
Yeah, exactly that. When in hindsight, there's
Why?
no reason why child benefit can't be paid to two parents. It's just the system won't let them. Well,
Correct.
if I can prove I've got a 50-50 court order, surely you should be able to go 50% is going to go to you, 50% is going to go to you. Now, my ex-partner's been a bit decent here. She's actually transferring me each month half the child benefit.
Okay.
Fair play. But we shouldn't have to be there. Ultimately, this is social services aren't even convinced this relationship's over.
Wow.
But yeah, just for me, Scott, it's, at what point, like everybody that I've told have turned around and went, is your ex all right? Like introducing a paedophile to a child, is that quite literally not what they enjoy? And I'm like, yeah, I suppose so. It's like it's their special of the day, isn't it? But that's not normal, and that should be an instant from mum to dad. Now we'll investigate.
Surely any parent's primary job in life is the safeguarding of their child. Are they fed? Are they okay? Just everything. So making sure that child is safe warm, fed. Those three really are what a parent should be doing. If your actions are inhibiting one of those
Any
three
of
primary
those, yeah.
goals,
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
in one of the
simply,
court hearings, we had a team leader from social services who stood up in court to the district judge we had the last time round, and turned around and said, "See, in Portsmouth City Council, we don't really like removing the child unless like they're in immediate danger. For example, like they're about to lose a limb." And I thought, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, so I don't get it. Like, they were so against just making any changes because it might negatively affect my daughter. Well, yeah, it's going to, because we're making a dramatic change in her life. But that's where you guys as social services are meant to come in and support us as a family in making that change. But the problem is they're too overworked. They're too overworked. They're too quick to just dismiss things. And like I say, Scott, system needs to change, mate. And I am on a mission to do that. And I will not rest until I have done. So
I think it's a good cause. I think it's I wish you luck with it because, and I mean this with the greatest respect. I fear it will fail,
oh, I
and
agree. But that's why
I
we go
fear,
harder again.
yeah, and anything that I can help with that, then obviously you know that I'm quite happy to do
Of
that.
course.
I just I've seen so much. I've been on the outskirts of a lot of this um, for about the last 3-4 years with Ian Briggs and a guy called Craig Ballman
Mhm.
and various other people. And I see how hard these people fight. And the stories I've heard would just destroy you. And some the stuff that you've said about the children that have lost their lives and that have been failed by systems that are designed to
To
protect
protect
them.
them.
And I just I worry that there's so much intrinsically involved with money because ultimately it comes down to money.
Of course it does.
And anything's ever going to change. I don't know, and I'm not saying it never will. And I
Maybe it's time for a
genuinely,
hunger strike outside.
and
Yeah.
yeah, or dressing up as Batman on the top of the fucking thing. And I genuinely hope because we have to live in hope, mate. That at some point somebody says enough, enough. This isn't working. Why is this not working? And what can we do to make it work for the children first and foremost? Because they're the most
Well,
important
that's
thing.
it. I mean, point number one of the child welfare checklist, the child is the paramount priority. Well,
Yeah,
they aren't. That's the thing. In most cases, they aren't, but they bloody well should be.
and I mean, I always remember that, and you probably had this with your ex, that we had discussions of if we ever split up, we make sure that we get on and we put the child first, blah blah blah, until you split up, and then you don't put the child first. Well, one of you doesn't put the child first, and then it all comes down to money again, and it
Mhm.
just infuriates me. I don't do a lot of these sort of podcasts for one reason, and that's what I said to you the other week. I don't do them because it boils my it absolutely boils
Balls
my
piss.
piss,
Yeah. Same.
and it sends me down a route I don't. I'm getting better. I'm getting better, but it sends me on a. And I did when I did the first podcast I ever did on my own. I did the Parental Alienation, where I did a lot of research and I told
Yeah.
my own story,
There
and it
is a
affected
group called Papa. They're actually
Papa.
based in Portsmouth. Yeah.
Well, they've got a meeting next Friday down at the Spinnaker Tower. I think they're
They're
doing their
lighting it
thing
up
down
green,
there.
aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, so I might end up at that.
Probably will. I'll just see you there.
Yeah, so I'm off next week, so I might well end up at that.
But I think what you were saying about, again, me in this nice way possible, you not do a lot of podcasts on this because it balls piss. It's hard for people to hear, and I don't think people don't like change. People don't want to hear things that aren't working. They want to hear the success stories, but you're not going to get any success stories unless you talk about it more. And
I think there's a big problem, and I'll tell you what that problem is from my point of view. And having done a few of these now, it's one of those things. It's a subject that unless you are affected by that subject, it means nothing to you.
no, exactly that. Yeah. It's like typical football analogy, isn't it? Oh, well, England won the World Cup. Yeah, cool, but I don't like football, mate. So
Yeah.
I don't really care.
And unless you've been through the systems that myself, you, and thousands of other people in this country have been failed by, then it'll be like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, poor you.
Yeah.
But
And
we talk about it more.
I don't know how. Hopefully, campaigns like yours, can change that. And I'm always open for, because the mainstream media, as I said, they won't touch this. They won't touch.
No.
I know of. There've been a couple of instances where it was going to hit certain papers. I can't say who, and I can't say when. And then lawyers got involved, solicitors got involved, and things never happened. And then things pull out, and it's like they're afraid of the DWP, the government, and it's ridiculous, because ultimately, you're absolutely right. Children are suffering here. Adults are suffering as well, but
it's all about the children. That's the problem. Yeah. I mean, what I will do is I'll give a little update video after my meeting tomorrow, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, honestly, for anybody who wants to support the cause, I think it's an important one. Equal Parenting UK on Facebook.
So you just got Facebook, so you've not got a website or anything yet?
Not yet. Like I say, very, very baby in the process. There is one coming. We're looking sort of towards mid-May. But yeah, there will be something. Thing is, we start going websites, and they have to be registered as charities, and that's not necessarily what we're all about, being a charity cause. But, there will be things like that, donating to, specific charities to help with these sorts of things. Will all be campaigns that we'll be running. But yeah, so far we're just a Facebook page. I have, through a mutual friend of ours, ordered about 1,000 stickers that will be finding their way to a lamppost near you, with a QR code on that you can scan, follow the journey. So
there'll be a link in the description of this video. It's also my podcasts are available on all good podcast downloads, so Apple, Google, Spotify, probably some shit ones as well. They'll be in there as well. It's on SoundCloud. So Amazon, I'm everywhere, mate. I'm a dog shit. Just no one listens, which is fine.
No, well, that's why we're here, right?
But yeah, so go and give Zach's love. Equal Parenting UK. It is important, and even if you're not. And he's right. Some of these are hard listens. The Gavin Briggs one's a hard listen with Ian Briggs. It's horrible. But unless people take a stand, nothing's ever going to change. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's working. And at the moment,
this ain't working. Right. Yeah.
No, it doesn't mean it's right. There's children suffering, and one child, as I said in the CMS thing, 800. I think it's 800, somewhere around that region. Provable deaths per year of adults is too many, and it's far too many as children.
Let's change the system, mate.
Let's do it.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate the time.
I'll have you back, mate. Say like, share, subscribe. I don't care. We'll have Zach back on, find out how his meeting got on, and we'll go from there. But go and give him some love. Go and support his campaign. Share it to your friends, even if you're not interested in it. The more people get the word out there, someone will be. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.